And a very good evening to you, and welcome to Politics 101. If you're joining us from Guyana, of course, it's evening here in Guyana, Tuesday evening. If you are in the wider Caribbean, it's still evening. North America, the times are synchronized at this time of year. Welcome to all of you to Politics 101 tonight. Our guest is going to be Dr. Henry Jeffrey, and we're going to be talking about some issues relating to a couple of letters he wrote, and which also formed his column that he writes for the Village Voice, which you can find online. And those columns, letters were responded to by Dr. Randolph Prasad. We're going to be less concerned about Prasad and more concerned about the essence of the columns that Dr. Jeffrey wrote. So that's going to be our show tonight. Good evening to you, and welcome to Politics 101. Good evening to all of you. Good evening to the people of Buxton. I just left there today. It was a busy day. My goodness. We had two buried, two deaths there, two funerals, and gosh, when you belong to these small villages and two, 3, 4 deaths per week is a lot, and we try to go to funerals. It's a way to get to meet people these days, because a lot of the people who are older don't get to come out, and so you get to see them at funerals, also to bury the dead. And my condolences to the Barnes family, the Gordon family, Miss Elaine, who was tragically crushed by that garbage truck a few weeks ago. She was laid to rest today. On Sunday, one of my neighbors, the Sankos, condolences to them. So it's been quite a busy couple of days for us, and there are about 2 or 3 other deaths in the village. Condolences to the Samuels. Grantley's are well-known villagers, passed away. And then the young man that got shot by the police, alleged accomplice of Smalley, the fellow that they said, Howard, that they said cranked the gun or took the gun away from the police, and he was killed. I sat in the same bench with his mother at school, so I know him from a youngster. I know his father very well. And condolences to the family. So all the Buxtonians, Politics 101, good evening to you. Good evening to those of you who squeeze your little contribution in my hand. I thought, oh God, Lord, yeah, there's something about the folk, something about the villagers, and they hug you and squeeze the little thing in your hand. Thank you all for your little contributions, and they mean a whole lot, because they're coming from poor people who don't have much. And the old lady who whispered in my ears and said, "Boy, me get old, me go dead just now. When me go give a vote for you?" And it just occurred to me that yes, people in the village, watch you grow up and who never got that opportunity, if you will. we are never going to get anywhere in politics without the people. Sometimes political parties, in trying to guide the struggles, substitute their own thoughts for the people's thoughts. Sometimes the leader, the messianic leader, think that he has all the answers. But when you move among people and you hear the wisdom that's coming from there, but you also, the encouragement and the confidence, it gives you hope for your community, for your country, and for the cause that you are engaged in. So I just want to, again, thank all the Buxtonians for their continued support, never wavering, and I am humbled to have been born in that community, to grow up there, and to still be associated with that community, because sometimes when one gets drained, you get some petrol from the people. All of you across Guyana, good evening. Good evening, all of you in the so-called diaspora. I'm wondering these days whether to refer to us as diaspora. Last week, I was on a program in Jamaica, on a Jamaica radio station, and they were discussing the question of overseas votes and whether people in the diaspora should be given a vote. And we got into a discussion about what is a diaspora. People now are living in North America and in Guyana or Trinidad or Barbados, as the case may be, split up the time, 6 months. Somebody like myself, I spend 4 or 5 months per year because of the nature of my job in the United States. I'm able to do so. I'm lucky I get to vote here most of the time. I get to run as a candidate in the party or the coalition and all that kind of stuff. But the question of what is a diaspora still the diaspora? When people overseas tend to be very, very active. I mean, you hear about my own village there, Buxton, they're talking about all these carnival and big maypole, and when you check it out, a lot of people from so-called overseas are the moving forces behind those things. So I am using the term diaspora advisedly. Danet Booker, good afternoon. Jesus said to tell you plenty out there, and they said they miss you. They said they miss you, and they tell me I'm going to see you tonight, and I must tell you that they miss you. So Danet had passed on the message from your friends them that they miss you. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. We're going to be talking tonight about this issue. Dr. Henry Jeffrey wrote a letter that provoked them in the PPP. After underfunding Georgetown for more than 25 years, the PPP now wants its citizens' votes. And it set them in a tizzy, because I think Jeffrey is on to something, and they know that he's on to something. And often they get very antsy when you're on to something. After underfunding Georgetown for more than 25 years, PPP now wants its citizens to vote for them. And then he was responded to by a PPP man, and he in turn responded to the PPP man. We're going to be talking with Dr. Jeffrey about that issue. Yes, last night, Vincent Alexander was on here, and he did say that by his count, there are about 10% of the armed forces couldn't find the names on the voters list, and that they're not likely to get time off to go and vote on election day in their constituencies. So he is estimating at a minimum 900 to 1,000 joint services members would be disenfranchised. As now we can say they're potentially going to be disenfranchised. We are hearing about some of the ranks being ordered out to vote and all kinds of things. I think members of the PNC have gotten hold of some quote-unquote evidence. We are waiting to see how that would evolve. But you know, Jeffrey has been saying on this program over and over and over again, over and over and over again, the objective of the PPP is domination, and they're going to do anything to achieve that. And that the whole question of manipulation of elections, you know, is central to that thrust. Of course, last night I raised the question that in 2011 there was an attempt to rig the election, and when it got up to the commissioners, Vincent Alexander was able to pick it up, and so that attempt was turned back. The PPP says that there was an attempt in 2020 to rig the election. The numbers, the issues never got to the level of the commissioners, for the PPP commissioners to do what Vincent Alexander did in 2011. That is to pick up the rigging and to turn it back. That never happened. We know what happened. The point is, let's for argument's sake, say that there was an attempt to rig the election by the PNC in 2020. What makes that attempt so different from the attempt in 2011? Why is the 2020 attempt, now for argument's sake, because I am still, the 2020 attempt never got to the level of the commissioners as it did in 2011, and the court hasn't yet heard the petition. But let's, for argument's sake, here were two attempts. Why is one elevated to the status that it has been elevated to, as some, you know, people are talking about how democracy was threatened. Well, was it threatened in 2011? Let me bring in Henry Jeffrey. Henry, good evening.
Good evening, David. Glad to see you again.
Yes. There's never a dull moment. There's never a dull moment.
No, you live in a very interesting country, in the sense that, I mean, the politics is always quite exciting, if not productive to the ordinary person, but certainly very, very exciting. It is a different kind of a country, and we were, in a sense, lucky to born in it.
Yes. Because as people who study politics, whether we call ourselves political scientists or not, I mean, Guyana is really just a fascinating place. My students, whenever I teach them about Guyana, their answer to me is that, Professor, you teach us about theories, but which one of these theories explain Guyana? And that's where we get in a country. Can you answer that question for me? Here's the question. Attempt to rig an election in 2020, in 2016. Vincent Alexander was able to stop it, right? Come 2020, the PPP says there was an attempt to rig an election. Of course, it never got to the commissioners. It's still in the courts. But let's, for argument's sake, as I said, there was an attempt. Why was the attempt in 2020 elevated to the heavens and the attempt in 2011 silenced?
Well, David, it's politics and all propaganda.
Yeah.
First of all, elections aren't rigged on election day. And
Yes.
both parties try to do that on the day when they start realizing that problems that they can't win. Essentially, the elections in 2020 were rigged, but by the PPP and the PNC trying. That's always been my position. You don't rig election. The PPP had so many wrong things in the box going on that they had so many tainted votes that could easily have been thrown out of the box. To this day, you can't get the courts to say that. People who are saying, at least some of the sensible people who are saying, all they're saying, those were the votes in the box. But the elections only judge what are in the box. If I find out what was in the box before the election is called, it is for the election authorities to deal with it. And that election authority did not deal with it. She said she makes some story that she didn't have the power later. But that's a curious thing. Oh, I don't have the power to deal with all these people from abroad that has voted, and the people, media people start saying, oh, dead people can't vote and all of that. Yet we know it happened in Myanmar and all these places. We know it happened here also. The problem, why only 22% of the people believe that this government or the governments in Guyana generally is representative of the people, is because too many people are involved in the rigging. You're getting people voting all over the place, doing people know. So when other people go and ask them, they say, that is it. I mean, so the PPP rigged the election of 2020 because they end up in government. The coalition might, when they start realizing what's going on in the boxes and seeing all the difficulties, they try something from where I'm standing here. But that is not what an election is never sensibly rigged on election day. The PPP were playing with the numbers in election before. It's just that election day they got caught up with the PNC doing their own thing and moved to rig the elections. What's this? Uh-oh.
Yeah, and you're still with me. You're
still hearing me?
Yes, I'm still hearing you.
Yeah, but I don't know where this thing is gone. It's just disappeared.
But we're seeing you and we're hearing you. That happens sometimes.
You are seeing me?
I'm seeing you and hearing you. The thing is somewhere.
Okay.
It happens to me sometimes.
Okay.
So you are not going to see yourself, but I see you hearing you. You get it back.
Good. These things are disappearing on me. But what I am saying is that effectively, when the PNC start realizing what's going on, they did try something. Just like the PPP in 2011, they tried something. The truth is that the PPP got through with what they were trying in 2011 because there was an effort at regime change then.
There you go.
Because there was an effort at regime change then.
There you go.
And since you had an effort at regime change, PNC could not get through with what they were trying. But elections are manipulated in this country. That's why when people come and tell me about the floating voters, I say, man, the amount of rigging going on negates the floating voters. It's significant. It is significant. It's going on all the time. And there's no such thing as a floating voter. You can't judge how many they are because, as I said, that's why 22% of the people in the country believe that the government is not representative of a democratic outcome. Nami says that the PPP came, they got what, 50.6% of the vote or whatsoever. Only 22% of people believe that they represented.
Which means the people who supported them,
they only supported
them.
Because ordinary people know this. People know.
Let's come to the local government election because you, as I said, you wrote that column and then a letter in the Stabroek, the Kaieteur News. After underfunding Georgetown for more than 25 years, the PPP now wants its citizens' vote. You're saying that there is at a minimum there is some kind of contradiction there, hypocrisy. Talk to me. What is it?
No. It's not a contradiction if you know the PPP's goal.
All right.
The PPP goal is to establish political ethnic dominance in Guyana. They are underfunding Georgetown largely to demonstrate that you can't run it. You know, PNC can't run it. Maybe black people can't run it. Whatsoever it is, they can't be run. And therefore, when they do this for umpteen years, they now come and tell you, oh, please, man, go to Army Green and ask him the litany of things he tried to raise funds for the city. Ask him. Even the lotto he said he was trying with, they take it over this. I mean, I don't have the litany of things. You can't raise funds to do anything. And now they keep it down, and now they say we can do better. Well, obviously, if you are the man holding it down all the time, you must be the man who can do better. It doesn't take a genius to see that, and then you can't expect me to vote for you because you are coming with that. Indeed, the urban rehabilitation program was something about 25 million or something dollars. You had an important element there for about 3 or 4 million US dollars, we talk about it, that was supposed to do institutional strengthening of the city. It doesn't matter how much money you put in this place. If the institutions are weak, it's like Guyana. The institutions are weak, and look what the government doing with all your funds all over the place, buying votes when they feel like. So effectively, the city needs institutional strengthening. Indeed, because of the PPPs wanting consistently not to bother with the institutional strengthening. Imagine that. You are not going to be bothered with institutional strengthening, and you are the government, and you know that this institution weak. Why would you do that? Ask yourself, why would I do that? If I want this, essentially, the city to be managed properly. You do that because you don't want it to be managed properly. And I didn't say it. The Burroughs report that they said set up said it. He says, oh, it was supposed to be institutional and infrastructure, but all of the money went into infrastructure. You would have thought if you want your police to work, you must have strengthened the institution. Don't want to take the money to buy guns and trucks and things to take. You got to set up there, and the British fell out for that.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Yes.
But they don't want these things to work. They want to undermine them, particularly things that African Guyanese are around. They want to undermine. And now they're coming to the same people and says, oh, please vote. But, give us a try. Well, I mean, it's so absurd. Even if you get a try and do anything, you're not really doing anything because you prevented the thing from happening in the first place.
In the first place. You say here, Henry, and I quote, where Africans are concerned, the politics of debasement even eschews the cultivation of the association and activities. The PPP does not only seek to stymie the freedom and prosperity of individual Africans, but also the associations that are there to aid and help them to grow and to development. Just consider what's happening to the Guyana chapter of the ITPAD, the thing. Yeah, for just objectively doing their work, national funds to which African people have equitable ownership and right have been taken away by a still questionable government with an extremely marginal majority. Strong statement. Explain for us.
Well, what is there to explain is true. I mean, you don't have to go anywhere. IPAD and they went there and they said, look, after they did their research, they found a whole lot of discrimination at the local levels all over the place. And PPP recognized that. And therefore, this whole gap about when they went to Vincent and start saying, "Oh Lord, you stole money," these people went out, showed them books and all that. It made no difference. It made absolutely no difference, because effectively what they are doing is contradiction to what the PPP wants to happen. They did some research on the ground, and I believe they made a good prima facie case that any place Africans are, the result is that it's becoming decrepit. The regime is undermining it. Look. We talk about public service. And a friend called me today and he said, "You ever consider seriously what the public service thing?" I said, "What?" He said, and I'm going to maybe write on that. He said, "Look, what is a minister's salary now?" I said, "Maybe $1 million, because in 2020, Kaicho News had a thing, but that would have put it at 980 something thousand. I said, "Maybe $1 million." He said, "What was it in 1992? I said, "Well, I was there. I mean, I know it was when I got there as a senior minister, it was about $21,000. He said, that is almost a 47%, a 47 times increase over that period. So to be $1 million now from 21, it's almost 47 times, not percent, times increase." He said, "If you take that 47 times that they have increased their own salary, and you put it on the public service salary, what was that?" I told him, I said, I think it was about, I was there. I mean, I said, thinking about $3,120 or something. He said, "If you put 47 times to that, what would the minimum wage of the public servants be without changing the comparativeness of which?" I said, "No." He said it would be nearly $150,000 would be the minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "No, you see," he said, "it would be nearly $150,000 would be the minimum wage for public servants today. But what is the minimum wage? Half of that? Not even half of that. Not even reach half of that. It was 60 something $1,000. And who are the lower levels of the public servants that are getting this sort of thing? Oh, Africans again. Africans again. Imagine that. The minimum wage today, based on the same proportion of income increases given to public service as a whole, as far, would have done that if they had do it at 47. If they had done it at what they did for the public servants, they would have been getting half what they're getting now, maybe 400 something thousand dollars.
Yep.
So I mean, I don't argue. I argue these things. I try to be logical and be objective. I'm saying, all right. All of these things could be politics if you want. You can, and all sort of nonsense. And he pointed out to me, he says, but remember, the hierarchy, the political hierarchy that are getting these things are only Indians and PPP supporters. You and 1 and 2 might be there, but they are money own PPP support. But the bulk of people that's getting nothing are essentially Africans. And, David, that's why I think in my book, I call my book, the fortive implementation. And I said, look, and that is why the conference that was just completed in the US, the International Decade Conference, is so important. Because, and the presentation by Dr. Blackman was the most important presentation there. Because Dr. Blackman's presentation turned out to say, and the conference endorsed it even before, because last year they endorsed that you should do disaggregated data.
Mm-hmm.
And you must do disaggregated data on race, this, that, and that. Yet when you ask this government, all right, people are lying on you. They're saying nonsense about you. Yes, when you ask them, you say, do the data. They say, you go and do it. The UN body said that government must do it. These people have made out a prima facie case. They make out a little case about it. All these things that they're picking up, about public service, a case. Even if it is wrong, a government should say, pick up the UN body thing and say, let's run with it. Let's go do it and let's see if it is true. And if it's not true, it's not to kill nobody or anything. If it is not true, it's not true. If it is true, what are we going to do about it in the future? What are we going to do? But you see, that is the problem. The future.
The future.
They don't want to do nothing that they're doing now in the future. And therefore, their representative at the place going to say, we have laws and rules and all this thing. Laws and rules when you're breaking them willy-nilly.
That's right. That's right.
You think anybody fall for that? Those are usually the excuse of autocrats and dictators. The rules are there. The rules are there. When they're undermining the courts, they're undermining everybody.
Yeah. But the United Nations itself, in the rationale for the decade, said tremendous strides have been made in these countries as far as the laws are concerned.
Exactly, just now.
However, that has not amounted to the end of racism, hence the decade.
Yes.
So I said, is this your... And Henry, I don't mean to be, elitist, but when I see young people are being sent on these assignments, and they go on the international stage and make themselves a fool because she has not even read the rationale for the decade. And she goes and talk about laws,
yes. But everybody know, in the PNC who was the master to tell you about laws when you tell you anything. That's what I he used to say the law is there, but chief, but the law, if this thing happens, the law is there, he gone again. But I'm telling you, there's an old hat that she spilled there.
Yes.
And
yes.
You're right, you're sad, but you say, how can anybody go to a place like this and say that? And I saw a letter today in the Pentagon said, well, I've done much more than under the PNC. I met the minister, I did this. In about Georgetown, and I said, what is going on? You're taking advantage of people that don't really grasp what is it that PPP is doing. And that is precisely what's going on. So effectively, as I said, I think this is the most important thing. We have to get an ethnic disparity analysis like has been done in Britain. If it's not true, now the UN said so, and the opposition and them must push for that, if not anything else. If not that, because that affects the people of Guyana directly in both governance and other things. All the thing about reparations and great, but it's secondary in terms of what is affecting our ordinary people. Look at what the man pointed out to me today about the public servants. Look at it. Today, the minimum wage should be 150,000. When I do it, it turned out to be 148, but I will quarrel. But the point is, look at it. You're not seeing it. It is there, but you're not seeing it because you don't have disaggregated data. And you don't want to do it. They're saying, you go and do it and prove it. And going to tell people, give us a chance. Well, if the gullible would, the gullible and people that are so poor and so on might, and you're doing it, but it would not satisfy the people who told them that the system is broken. What the PPP is doing right now, if they understand it, is demonstrating that this system is broken. They might know this. They think if they go there and get vote in the box, oh, that is showing they win something. If they go back, those same people will tell them, but what you have done, if you give me the whole budget to their buying votes, I can win elections too.
There you go. There you go. There you
I
go.
mean,
Yeah, you made a very important point, which I want you to address here, and that is this thing about going and buying votes. That is in itself taking away the right of African Guyanese to choose their own representatives in a willing way. Expand on that for us.
watch. The United Nations said it, and that is not the human rights says it. That every ethnicity has the right to choose people that they want, to do what they want, and the country's constitution and that must take into consideration. Go to Kosovo, and you will see that I think the Serbs are only now 5%, but they got a historic relationship with the country, but they're only about 5% now. And you know, the 5% of people, the constitution of Kosovo, which was supervised by the Western country during the war, give this Kosovans, give the Serbians power to stymie laws and rules because they said they had an historic relationships with this country. Much less if you have numbers. So you have this system. What the PPP is doing right now is demonstrating that the system is broken. You're running all over the place, doing all sorts of unusually moral, illegal things. You are demonstrating that the system is broken. And that is what people are telling them. So when they go back to the principles and say, we won, they're going to say, you won what? If anybody can do what you can do, buy this, we go undermine local government. You got local government, and you are going in the local government areas to give small contracts to people to do work in the local government areas. What kind of thing is it? If the local government is there, you got to deal with the local government. You might not like them. You might think they are idiots. You might do whatsoever. But they are the representatives of those communities. Why the point of having them? If you can now just walk in and say, I am giving you things to do small contracts. I mean, the system is broken, and the system need to be changed. The system definitely need to be changed.
Is it sustainable what the PPP is doing, Dr. Jeffrey? I mean, above and beyond some short-term gains that they may get, is it sustainable? I mean, you're saying the system is...
All right. Yeah, I got it. It is sustainable only if you become a dictator, autocrat.
There you go.
Only a dictatorship can keep this going. And everybody knows that. Anybody that knows, you just ask about the theory of this kind of country. When you have two large ethnic groups controlling 80% of the people, and you don't want to make the kind of concession like even Suriname, you can't become no president. And they don't have two large people. They're more multi-ethnic. But you can't become president unless you can win 2/3 of the votes in the National Assembly. You can become president by winning one vote over 51. So effectively, you have a situation in which only a dictatorship can keep it going. And that is why you're going to have to live with. And all this nonsense about, you being a minister, you got power. Ministers on the Constitution said ministers are only advisors. The Constitution, minister advisors to the president and them. And then the Constitution tie up the presidency with the with the head of the ruling party. So what you have? You don't have no separation of power. And then worse than that, you then on the mic, because Norton said no, choose the judiciary, choose who is there. You don't want to choose them. Norton said choose the two people who have been acting and doing well. Some even say they bias in favor of the PPP. Well, choose them, keep them. No. So the judiciary now is questionable in issues. It wasn't a Trinidad lawyer that come here and said you can't get no fair case in political matters in Guyana.
Right.
So effectively, you don't have the fundamentals of a democratic society. Separation of powers. The party who control the executive, control the parliament, and undermine the judiciary. So it's done. What you have really is a kind of dictatorship, an autocracy, and that is what the last thing called Guyana, they said it's elected democracy.
Bordering
on autocracy. So
Dr.
that's
Henry.
where we are, and we gotta understand where we are doing all these shenanigans of we come give me a chance, I gonna think. No, you had a chance for 20 years. You could have, if any government could not have dealt with the opposition, even if the opposition hate them, and get Georgetown right in 20 years, the government should take a walk. And at least it demonstrates that the system that you have, you can't deal with the opposition and needs to change. So if you can't deal with the opposition, now you have to wait 20 years later and then come and say, give me a chance, I'm going to do it. What kind of nonsense? 20 years. Georgetown remained the same. So, I mean, but here we go. It's what is this?
Yes. Are you surprised to learn that at a minimum, and this is Vincent Alexander saying it, at a minimum on Friday, 10% of the armed forces did not get to vote because they could not find their names on the list where they're working. And Vincent said that he drew this thing to the attention of GCOM. And apparently the government commissioners argued that to ensure that the list at the place where people are stationed are in order, they said it's too much work. And so people went where they're working, found out that their names are not on the list. They could still vote but they will have to travel to their constituency to vote. We know that no government is going to allow police and soldier time off on election day. Talk to us, what's happening there?
But Vincent, but David, why are you asking me that for?
Because you are the analyst.
No, were you surprised?
No, I am not surprised.
And I'm not surprised. Nobody in Guyana is surprised. 80% of the people here in the PPP doing this thing are not surprised. Because they're expecting more, and there's going to be more to come.
Yeah.
This is not something to surprise you. This is what has been going on for the longest while. So no, I'm not surprised. I'm expecting anything else to happen with votes. So you're going to get up and say, I've got X votes in the thing. If I was the people you got to talk to, and say, please don't even let's talk about how you get them votes. Because now votes in the box we talking, some legality about it. We are talking about getting democratic votes in the box. And what you'd have done has gotten no democratic vote. Maybe some of your hardcore supporters, maybe. Because you got no democratic votes in the box. You went doing all machinations to do. Why you think the whole question about election financing is so important? Why? Because if you got a whole lot of money, you can try to do anything and buy over people to do anything.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And interestingly, the court didn't do anything to deal with the question of the gerrymandered boundaries. And what we are hearing now, as a result of the gerrymandered boundaries, ballot boxes, which should be in one constituency are in another constituency, and a whole set of confusion that's happening there. Talk a little bit about the court here, because many people are saying that the court is biased towards the PPP. I am not prepared to go there, but I do believe that the kind of jurisprudence, the kind of conservative jurisprudence that we are seeing from our court is really not helping the situation here. What do you think?
Let me say that on the important issue, when the issue is important, the court has tended to go with the PPP. There's a whole lot of little issues. Indeed, I won a bet the other day when they said, the minute the court said something to the effect, oh, they throw Jagdeo and Nandilal thing, you remember?
From joining the case, yes.
Yes, and then people come and say but that is an insubstantial case. Whether not they or not they, but I'm going to bet you this, they win the rest, the remainder. Because that has been the trend. So you might fall for that. Indeed, they might have gone in there to make you fall for that. But I am not. I mean, as I said, a lawyer come in Trinidad, a senior lawyer, I can't remember his name, an Indian lawyer that I thought he was.
Yes, he's an Indian lawyer. I'm trying to remember. Yeah.
But you see, politics is a lot about perception and what people perceive and what people believe and all that. You have to believe in a politician to go and vote for him and all sort of thing. You don't even know what sort of caliber he is. You have to believe and so on. You are a political party. If the amount of people start believing that, you have a problem. Regardless of not if it is true or false. You have a problem. The question is how to solve that problem, not to go along like nothing happened. And that's what this government does because it serves its purpose. You can't go along like if nothing is wrong when people start believing all of that. Even I saw a report talking about the courts the other day, an international report criticizing the courts. So like you can never know, but the PPP, when it matters, seem to come out on top on the judicial decisions that are reported.
And that's a fact. And as you said, over time,
yes,
perception becomes reality. Perception becomes reality. Henry, we haven't talked since the Madhya stuff. Yeah. You were once minister. You were once Minister of Education, I think. Yeah, you were once Minister of Education, and so you're familiar with these issues. I saw the report there on the UNICEF report, and I found that of all of them, I found that the most damning, because this report is there. The government can't now said it didn't have a report from an international agency that really spoke to the systemic breakdown. How could this have happened in Jeffrey?
Well, let me make 2 points here.
Yeah.
Firstly, what actually occurred might be the result of that young lady is losing it for a moment for what happened to her, right? Temporary madness or whatsoever. They do this to me. She never intended all this to happen to people.
No.
It's that sense of temperament. I'm giving you my perspective.
Yes.
That is your thing. But that is not the major issue. And maybe, yes, you got charge her and so on, but you have to charge her taking into consideration that sort of thing of what. But electricity could have caused a fire. What would happen then?
Yes.
The same thing. So if they by chance are just electricity cause this fire, they've been sleeping, the same thing could happen. So the result, it's not really that you shouldn't be pinpointing the girl. You should be asking yourself, as you did, as a matter of fact, why this thing is not properly arranged, and why steps weren't taken, for instance, the UNICEF report. I have heard of all sorts of things. But when I was the Minister of Education, and I have papers to the effect, so I said I'm going to write something on this issue. You raised it, as you tend to do without saying. I said, when this is blown over, I'm going to publish one of the things we do. But let me give you a broad. A ministry is there to do three basic things. They are there to create the plan for the education sector, to monitor the education sector, and to represent the education sector and any sector in the wider world and in Guyana, right? Three. That is all they got to do. But it's not as simple as that. For instance, and the reason they can't be the implementers is that you can't monitor yourself. You can't plan for the thing, run the thing, and then monitor the thing, monitor what went wrong. So normally in public and management and so on, you got to be the planner, you have to be the monitor, and you have to. When I was there, I made a point of setting up regional education committees. It is true that the government always, like at this site, even before PPP, that the implementers of the system would be regional. The regional system supposed to implement. The implementation of education is a job for the regions. But the monitoring of education is a job for the ministry. Now, what do you mean by monitoring? You can't say you didn't know, because monitoring don't mean wait till the year end and then ask for a report. When I left the ministry, we put out a monitoring system with about 13 headings. One of them had to do physical inspection certificate that had to come every 3 months to the Ministry of Education. And it didn't have, I placed computer people in every region, so that when the regional education discuss and so on, the computer personnel can send the whatsoever outcomes to me. So I can have it, I can see it on my computer. I can just go and I got the system there. I'm going to take, I can go, and all these thing, and they are monitored across a whole range of issues. Now, I don't know if they're doing that, but the minister can't walk and say, I didn't know. Because it's not only the physical infrastructure, how many education committee meetings you had. All of that is there. So how many parent teachers association meetings there were, all that they got in the school system in general. So it's going to be hard for you to say you didn't know. Monitoring means be on top of the monitoring. Now wait till the year finish to find out what's going on. You're going to be on top of it. Now, in my view, if all those things were done, you would have known about what's going on. And you would have been backing up the region. You'd have said, what is going on here? Why aren't you doing? Your job is to call on the region and at the end write them and copy to the president or whosoever if they're not doing what you tell them to do. So effectively, the buck must stop in any system, a proper system of management. The buck must stop at the Ministry of Education because that's its job. Its job is to plan the education sector, monitoring the education sector. And that monitoring must be systematic and on a close time frame, like a quarterly. We put it quarterly. So every quarter you would have seen what's going on. And this issue would have been raised at one stage or another. We had how many meetings the regional education officer attended? That was another at the regional council. So you would have known that because some of these officers can tell you, this one they call them to tongue and all that. I always said, don't tell me who call you to tongue. You don't work for me. You work for the region and regional chairman and that lot. So if they tell you stay, stay. Don't tell me anybody call you to tongue and you didn't tell the regional chairman. That's your problem. So effectively, if you had not necessarily the system I left, I mean, it might be an answer. That time, I think it was pretty cool, as a matter of fact, with me being able to sit on my computer and do that as you had meetings for all 10 regions. Wow. I thought it was pretty cool. But that's not the point. You might put other things in better things, but no minister can walk away and say, they didn't know it's the region. The region is only there to implement. You are to implement the monitors. You have to monitor the implementers, and in a fashion that would allow you to have timely information. So that's my position on that. And therefore, we got to wait for the
Commission of Inquiry.
Their inquiry. And there is a person who at the ministry who I thought was the deputy education officer, administration, who would directly have to do it. Minister don't have to do it, but he got to get up the things and all of that. So that's where I am with this.
That's where you are with that. Henry Jeffrey here tonight. We spend most of our time, of course, talking about this call by the PPP to give them a chance to run the cities when they are the ones who have run down the cities. And Jeffrey has been able to point that out. And we ended by talking about the madness, because that's what it's, systemic madness that happened there. Dr. Jeffrey, anything that I didn't ask you about that you badly want to talk about?
No.
Here is your chance.
You asked me, no.
Speak now or forever hold your peace. My brother, thank you very much. Thank you very much for
and remember that little talk we had today.
Right.
Good. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Good. Thank you. Henry Jeffrey there, laying it out for us and being frank as he always is. I want to thank you all for coming on. I'll be back tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is Wednesday night. I don't know who I have on. I know Hamilton Green is coming. And I've got to check in with the local government people, what's happening there on the ground. But we'll be back tomorrow night. Remember what we said? We said the elections were going to be rigged. And it didn't take an expert to know that. And now we see what's happening in the armed forces. We saw what happened with the candidates list and the backers for the candidates list. And now we are hearing some of the PNC candidates are saying that the gerrymandering is going to affect the outcome. So we said that the elections were going to be rigged, and the PPP has begun to rig the hell out of the elections. This is what we are facing. This is what we are facing in this country. A brazen, barefaced set of people. So our job is cut out. The PNC, APNU is contesting the election. I am not going to sit here and tell people not to go and cast their vote. That is your vote is your personal weapon. People have died for it. They've shed blood for it. And your vote is your personal weapon. And if you must use it against those who are working against your interest. Against your interest. Remember what's my motto here on this program as regard local government elections, as regard elections right now. To participate in elections that you know that are going to be rigged is perhaps not the best option. However, we will do nothing or urge people to do anything to help the PPP. You all hear me out. The WPA is not participating in the election because we feel very strongly that we have to highlight the PPP's rigging intentions. And from our perspective, the best way to highlight that is not to participate. But another opposition party is participating. And we feel that we must do nothing to undermine a fellow opposition party. Some may say we are stupid because the big party wouldn't do that for us. I hear that. But sometimes you have to see past the party. Do nothing to help the PPP. Do nothing to undermine the opposition. We have faith in your political intelligence to understand what we're saying. Your vote is your personal and private weapon, because it's a weapon. The vote sometimes can become a weapon. We feel that election day must be a day of uprising. We feel that election day we must make a political statement, strong political statement. You have the vote. Do what you feel you want to do with it, but use it as a weapon against those who are weaponizing your own country against you, weaponizing your own funds against you. Whatever you want to do with your vote on Monday, it's your choice. No politician can morally tell you what to do with your vote. My party is not in the election, and so those who are participating in the election should have all the space open to them to convince you to vote for them. And that is why we in the WP have suspended our public meetings to allow the APNU the space to convince you how to use your vote. All we are saying, and I repeat, recognize that we cannot continue to participate in elections that we know are already rigged. But this is not the time to do anything to help the PPP. And this is not the time to do anything to undermine the opposition. Again, some people may say, Hinds, you're stupid. The PNC will not do that for you. I'm looking past that. Use your vote how you feel it should be used. But use it as a weapon. Use it as a weapon. Because we're in the fight of our lives. And we may not have much, but we have the vote. And that vote is being manipulated and stolen even before you cast it. It's been stolen even before you cast it. We know that. But still, this is no time for sport. Use the vote as the weapon. And those who have sold their votes, those who have sold their ID cards for a jersey or a $40,000, the ancestors will deal with them. Some of them we understand. We understand from whence they come, but we don't have to agree with their action. But as I said last night, we can't cry. We better learn. Some were saying that when the PNC was in power, it did nothing for them as Black people. They have a point. Some of them who were saying so would say so even if the PNC had done something for them as Black people. They're opportunists in every race. They're opportunists in every, they're licorice people, as I said last night, in every race. The PPP is waving money, a little bit of money before them. And if Black people, some of them, a minority of them, want to go down as selling their dignity for a little money, that's their choice. But they must be made to pay for it. You all hear me? Even if they don't pay it today, they must be made to pay tomorrow. I'm making a differentiation between people who are PPP by conscience. And I know there's some Black people who PPP through thick and thin. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about those who consciously decide that they're going to sell our collective dignity for a penny. The only way to prevent it from happening again is to make them pay. And I'm not talking about harming anybody. I'm against that. I'm not talking about harming anybody. I'm not talking about violence against anybody. But you must make life uncomfortable for them in the community. When I was a small boy, I behave bad, I get licks. But sometimes my auntie never used to beat. She stopped talk to you. Oh, Jesus Christ. You all know what I'm talking about. Stop talking to you for 2-3 days. And that used to hurt more than licks. They must be made to pay. Those who are selling their dignity. And the first way to make them pay is for you to use your vote as a weapon against the slave master who's catching them. That's the first thing to make them pay, is to use your vote to punish the slave master. I'm not telling you how to vote, whether to vote at all. That's your decision. What I'm saying, use your vote to punish the slave master. Eric Williams said, Master Day, done. Master Day must done. I'll be there for now. But we have been through this many times before. And we're going to make it through. See you all tomorrow night. I leave tonight with a smile on my face. Last night I was angry. Tonight I am still angry. But I'm angry with a smile. Tomorrow night, I see you all. Love. Love. Without love. Love. Without love. There's not much to work with. Love you all.